Back when I was 24, I moved into my first solo apartment. This was in 2021, right when rent prices were actually somewhat reasonable for like 5 seconds. I found this place in a small complex in Arizona. Nothing fancy, just a basic two-bedroom that I could barely afford on my graphic design salary. The extra bedroom was supposed to be my office, for freelance work and all that. The complex was one of those U-shaped buildings with maybe 12 units total. Everyone parked in the middle lot, and you could pretty much see everyone's front door from everyone else's front door. Not ideal for privacy, but honestly, at the time, I thought it was kind of nice. Like, safer or whatever. I'd lived with roommates my entire adult life up to that point, so having my own space felt incredible, even if it was small. For the first couple weeks, I didn't really interact with anyone. I'd wave at people when I was getting my mail or taking out trash, but that was about it. Most of the neighbors seemed like regular working people. A couple of families with kids, some older folks, a few people around my age who I assumed were also trying to adult for the first time. Then I met Derek. Actually, I didn't really meet him so much as he introduced himself. I was carrying groceries in one afternoon, probably around 6 p.m. or so, and he just appeared next to my car. I remember I had like 4 bags in my hands and was trying to close the trunk with my elbow, looking like an idiot, when I heard, "Need some help with those?" I looked up, and there he was. White guy, maybe late 30s, kind of tall, wearing cargo shorts and a faded Metallica t-shirt. He had this smile that seemed friendly enough. Honestly, I was relieved because I definitely did need help. "Oh my God, yes, thank you," I said. He grabbed 2 of the bags from me and walked with me to my door. Unit 7. His was Unit 9, literally 2 doors down from mine. We made small talk about the complex, how the AC units were loud, but at least they worked, stuff like that. He seemed normal, maybe a bit chatty, but normal. Over the next week or so, I started noticing him outside more often. Like every time I came home from work, he'd be out there. Sometimes washing his car, sometimes just standing on his little patio smoking a cigarette, sometimes walking to his car. I'd wave, he'd wave back. Sometimes he'd come over and chat for a minute. Nothing weird, just neighbor stuff. But then I started noticing he was always looking toward my apartment, even when he was doing other things. I'd glance over while I was unlocking my door and he'd be staring in my direction. He'd usually look away quickly or pretend he was looking at something else, but I definitely caught him multiple times. I tried to brush it off. I mean, we lived close to each other, and the parking lot was small. Where else was he supposed to look? I didn't want to be that person who assumes every guy is creepy just for existing, you know? Then one night, maybe 3 weeks after I'd moved in, I was in my living room watching Netflix. It was probably around 10:30 p.m., and I had my blinds open because I like having natural light during the day, and I honestly just kept forgetting to close them at night. I was in my pajamas, just some old t-shirt and shorts, totally zoned out watching some true crime documentary. I got up to get water from the kitchen, and as I walked past the window, I saw him. Derek. Standing in the parking lot, facing my apartment. Just standing there. He wasn't on his phone, wasn't smoking, wasn't doing anything. Just standing and looking directly at my window. I froze. Like, literally stopped mid-step. My first thought was that maybe he was looking at something else, but no. His apartment was in the opposite direction, and there was nothing else in front of mine except a small bush and the parking lot. I quickly moved away from the window and closed the blinds. My hands were shaking a little, which felt stupid because, he was just standing there. He wasn't doing anything illegal, but something about it felt so wrong. I texted my friend Monica. "Is it weird if my neighbor just stands outside staring at my apartment at night?" She replied almost immediately, "Yeah, that's weird. Like how long?" "I don't know. I just noticed him. Maybe he's waiting for someone? At 10:30 at night? In a parking lot? Girl." She had a point. I peeked through the blinds again, just barely moving them so he couldn't see. He was still there. I watched for maybe 5 minutes, and he didn't move. He just stood there, completely still, looking at my window. Eventually, he walked back to his apartment. I didn't sleep well that night. The next day, I convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe he was on the phone and I just couldn't see it because of the angle. Maybe he was waiting for an Uber or something. I don't know. I wanted there to be a normal explanation, but then it happened again and again. Over the next 2 weeks, I caught him standing outside my apartment at night at least 4 more times. Different times, too. Once at 9 p.m., once at almost midnight, once at like 1:30 in the morning when I got up to use the bathroom. I started keeping my blinds closed all the time. I also started parking in a different spot, farther from my door, just so I could see if he was outside before I walked to my apartment. One afternoon, I was getting my mail, and one of my neighbors, this older lady named Barbara from Unit 3, came up to me. "Honey, I don't want to alarm you," she said quietly, looking around like she didn't want anyone to hear, "but that man in Unit 9 has been asking about you." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, asking about me?" "He asked me what your work schedule was, asked if you lived alone. I didn't tell him anything, of course, but I thought you should know." I felt sick. When was this? A few days ago. Maybe Thursday? Actually, it was Friday. It was Friday because I was coming back from my sister's. He just came up to me in the parking lot and started asking questions. I thanked her, went back to my apartment, and immediately called my landlord. I explained everything, the staring, the questions, all of it. The landlord said he'd look into it, but that unless Derek was actually threatening me or breaking some rule, there wasn't much he could do. Apparently, standing in a parking lot isn't a lease violation. That night, I was lying in bed around 2 a.m., couldn't sleep because I was so on edge, and then I heard it. A sound at my bedroom window, like a light scraping, almost like fingernails on glass. My bedroom faced the back of the complex toward a small wooded area. There was no reason for anyone to be back there. No walkway, no parking, nothing. Just trees and bushes. I lay there frozen, listening. The scraping came again. Then a soft tap, tap, tap. I grabbed my phone and called 911. I was whispering, which probably made me sound insane, but I was terrified. I told the dispatcher someone was outside my window. She asked if I could see them. I said no, I was too scared to look. She said officers were on the way and to stay on the line. The tapping stopped. I waited, phone pressed to my ear, hearing the dispatcher's voice, but not really processing what she was saying. After what felt like forever, but was probably 5 minutes, I saw red and blue lights outside. 2 officers checked around my apartment. They came to my door and said there was no one there now, but they found footprints in the dirt under my bedroom window. Fresh ones. They also found cigarette butts, the same brand Derek smoked. I'd seen the packs in his hand before. They went and knocked on Derek's door. He answered, and I watched from my window as they talked to him. I couldn't hear what was said, but after about 10 minutes, the officers came back to me and said he claimed he'd been home all night and didn't know anything about anyone being outside my window. They couldn't do anything. No proof it was him, even though, come on. Who else would it be? I didn't sleep at all that night. I pushed my dresser against the bedroom door and kept every light in the apartment on. The next morning, I called my parents. My dad drove 3 hours to come get me and help me break my lease. I moved back home for a month until I could find a new place. I lost my security deposit and had to pay a lease-breaking fee, but I didn't care. The landlord tried to keep me there, said I was overreacting, but my dad threatened to get a lawyer involved, and suddenly they were very accommodating. I found out later, after I'd already moved out, that Derek had been evicted about 2 months after I left. Apparently, multiple neighbors had complained about him. Barbara told me he'd done the same thing to another woman in Unit 11, but she'd moved out before I moved in. The landlord knew and didn't tell me. I still think about what would have happened if I'd stayed. If I'd kept brushing it off as nothing. I mean, he knew where I lived, knew my car, knew my schedule. The footprints under my window proved he'd been there, watching me sleep. Looking back now, all those times he was in the parking lot at night, he wasn't just standing there. He was watching to see when my lights went off, seeing my routine, planning. I've never left my blinds open at night since then. Not once. Story 2, the package thief. This happened when I was 29, about 2 years ago. I just bought my first house, nothing big, just a small 3-bedroom in a suburban neighborhood outside Portland. I was so proud of it, you know? First-time homebuyer, did all the paperwork myself, felt like a real adult finally. The neighborhood seemed perfect. Quiet street, lots of families with kids, well-maintained houses. The kind kind of place where people actually knew their neighbors' names. My house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, which I loved because it meant less traffic. My next-door neighbors on the right were the Johnsons, a retired couple who were super sweet. They brought me banana bread the day I moved in. On my left was a house that had been empty when I moved in, but about a month later, someone moved in there. A guy living alone, probably mid-40s, drove a beat-up Toyota Camry. I waved at him a few times, but never really talked to him. He'd just kind of nod and go inside. I worked from home mostly, freelance software development, so I was home a lot. I ordered pretty much everything online because honestly, who wants to go to stores? Amazon, Chewy for my cat's food, Target, you name it. I probably got packages 3 or 4 times a week. After my neighbor moved in, I started noticing some of my packages would go missing. Not all of them, just some. At first, I thought maybe delivery drivers were marking them as delivered when they weren't. Or maybe they were leaving them at the wrong house. I contacted Amazon a few times, and they always refunded me or sent replacements, so I didn't think much of it. But then, it started happening more frequently. I'd get the notification that a package was delivered, check my Ring doorbell footage, and see the delivery driver clearly leaving it on my porch. But when I'd go outside 10 minutes later, it'd be gone. This went on for maybe 3 weeks. I lost probably 6 or 7 packages. Nothing super expensive, but it was annoying. Dog food, some books I'd ordered, a phone charger, random stuff. I posted about it in our neighborhood Facebook group, asking if anyone else was having issues with package theft. A few people said they'd had packages go missing too, all on our street. Mrs. Johnson commented that she'd lost 2 packages in the past month. Then, one afternoon, I was in my home office, which has a window facing the street. It was probably around 2 p.m., and I saw the Amazon truck pull up to my house. I watched the driver leave a package on my porch, scan it, and drive away. I was in the middle of a work call, so I didn't go grab it immediately. But I could see my front porch from my office window, so I was kind of keeping an eye on it while I talked. About 5 minutes later, I saw my neighbor, the guy from the house on the left, walk across his lawn toward my house. I figured he was coming to my door for something, which would have been the first time he'd ever tried to talk to me. But he didn't come to my door. He walked straight up to my porch, picked up my package, looked at it, and then walked back to his house with it. I was still on the call, and I just stopped talking mid-sentence. My coworker was like, "Hello? You still there?" I hung up without even saying goodbye. I was just stunned. I'd literally just watched him steal my package in broad daylight, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I pulled up my Ring app and checked the recording to make sure I wasn't crazy. Nope, there it was. Clear as day. Him walking over, taking my package, walking back. You could even see his face perfectly in the video. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I know the obvious answer is call the police, but I was nervous. He was my neighbor. We shared a property line. I didn't want to start some huge feud. Instead, I texted my boyfriend Tyler. "Dude, my neighbor just stole my package and I have it on video." He called me immediately. "Are you serious? Like you saw him?" "Yes, I watched him do it. What do I do?" Tyler, who's much more confrontational than I am, said I should go over there and knock on his door, show him the video, and tell him I wanted my stuff back. That if he returned everything, I wouldn't call the cops. Looking back, this was probably not the safest idea. But I was angry, and honestly, I wanted my stuff back. The package he'd just taken had a mechanical keyboard I'd spent $150 on. So I went over there, I knocked on his door. My hands were shaking, but I tried to look calm. He answered, and I swear to God, he smiled at me like nothing was wrong. "Hey neighbor," he said. "What's up?" "Hey, this is awkward," I said, trying to sound casual, "but I have a Ring camera, and I saw you take my package just now. I have it on video." His smile didn't change, didn't even flicker. "Oh, that? Yeah, I grabbed it because I didn't want someone to steal it. I was gonna bring it over later. I wasn't expecting that response." "Oh, okay, well, can I have it now then?" "Sure, yeah, let me grab it." He left the door open and went inside. I stood there on his porch, feeling stupid. Maybe I had misread the situation. Maybe he was being helpful. But then I noticed something. Through his open door, I could see into his living room, and on his coffee table, I saw packages. Multiple packages. I could see a Chewy box, which I recognized because I order the same cat food every month, and the box is distinctive. My stomach sank. He came back with my package and handed it to me. Here you go. Sorry for the confusion. I took it, thanked him, and walked back to my house. As soon as I got inside, I locked the door and immediately called the police. I told them everything, showed them the ring footage, told them about all the missing packages, and told them about what I'd seen in his living room. 2 officers came to my house maybe 20 minutes later. They asked me questions, watched the video, and then went next door to talk to him. I watched from my window. They knocked. He answered. They talked. Then they went inside. They were in there for probably 10 minutes. When they came out, one of them came back to talk to me. We saw several packages in his residence, the officer said. He claims they're his, but we asked him to show us proof of purchase for them. He couldn't. We're going to get a warrant to search the property properly. Long story short, they ended up arresting him. They found packages from at least 7 different houses on our street. Some had been opened, some hadn't. He'd apparently been doing this for months, just casually walking around the neighborhood, taking packages off porches. What really freaked me out was when the police told me he'd been watching delivery patterns. He knew when people got packages and when they'd usually retrieve them. He'd been observing all of us. The guy ended up pleading guilty to a bunch of theft charges. I got most of my stuff back, though some of it had already been sold online or thrown away. But here's the thing that still bothers me. After he was arrested, I found out from Mrs. Johnson that he'd been going into people's backyards too. She'd seen him in her backyard once, claiming he was looking for his cat. She didn't think much of it at the time, but she never saw him with a cat. The police never found evidence of him going into my backyard. But I didn't have cameras back there. I have them now. I have cameras everywhere now, actually. Front, back, both sides of the house. It cost me like $800 to set up. But I don't care. I still think about what would have happened if I hadn't been looking out my window that day. If I hadn't seen him take that package, he would have just kept doing it. And I think about him in his living room, surrounded by other people's stuff, just smiling at me like everything was normal. The house is still empty. No one's moved in since he was arrested. I'm honestly glad. Every time I see that house, I remember him standing at my door, that weird smile on his face, lying right to me. Story 3, The Midnight Visitor. I was 26 when this happened, living in a duplex in a small town in Michigan. This was back in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, so everyone was kind of on edge anyway. I'd moved there for a new job at a hospital, working as a pharmacy tech. Night shifts, mostly, which meant I had a pretty weird sleep schedule. The duplex was divided pretty evenly, my side and the other side. Shared wall, separate entrances, but you could definitely hear your neighbor if they were being loud. When I moved in, the other side was occupied by a woman in her 50s. I think her name was Linda or Lydia, something like that. She was quiet, kept to herself. I barely saw her except when we'd occasionally get our mail at the same time. After about 4 months, she moved out. I didn't really think anything of it. People move, whatever. A new neighbor moved in maybe 2 weeks later. A guy, probably in his early 30s, named Chris. I only knew his name because I saw it on a package outside his door once when I was leaving for work. The first time I actually talked to him was when he knocked on my door asking to borrow a screwdriver. It was like 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. I'd just gotten home from a shift and was about to crash. "Hey, sorry to bother you," he said when I opened the door. "I'm Chris. I just moved in next door. I'm trying to hang some shelves and realized I forgot to grab tools when I moved. Any chance you have a Phillips head screwdriver I could borrow real quick?" He seemed normal enough, polite, apologetic about bothering me. I let him borrow a screwdriver from my kitchen junk drawer and told him to just return it whenever. He brought it back the next morning, knocked on my door around 10 a.m., which woke me up because I'd worked until 3 a.m. I answered the door in my pajamas, probably looking like death, and he apologized for waking me. Gave me back the screwdriver and thanked me. That should have been the end of it, right? One neighbor favor, done and done. But then he started knocking on my door more often. It was always for small things. He needed to borrow sugar. His Wi-Fi wasn't working, and could he borrow my phone to call the internet company because his phone died? His car wouldn't start, and did I have jumper cables? Each time, the requests were reasonable enough that I didn't want to be rude and say no. And it wasn't like he was coming over every day. It was maybe once a week, sometimes less. But I started to notice a pattern where he'd always come over when my car was in the driveway, meaning he knew when I was home. I worked night shifts 3 or 4 times a week, so I'd usually sleep during the day and be up at night before work. On my nights off, I'd try to fix my sleep schedule by staying up during the day and sleeping at night like a normal person, but it never really worked. One night, I think it was around 2 a.m., I was home on my night off, watching TV in my living room. I wasn't tired yet, just killing time before I tried to sleep. I heard a sound outside my door, like footsteps on the wooden porch we shared. I muted the TV and listened. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. Then I heard a light knock at 2 a.m. I looked through the peephole. It was Chris. I didn't open the door. "Yeah?" I called through the door. "Hey, it's Chris. Sorry, I know it's late. My power went out and I think it's just my side. Is yours working?" I looked around. All my lights were on, TV was on. Clearly I had power. "Yeah, mine's fine," I said. "Weird. Must be a breaker or something. Do you know where the breaker box is?" "I think it's in the basement, but I'm not really sure. You'd have to ask the landlord." "Oh, okay. Sorry for bothering you." "No problem." I listened to him walk away and back to his side. I looked through the peephole again and saw his door close. Here's the thing though, I could see under his door and his lights were on. There was definitely light coming from under his door. His power wasn't out. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he meant a specific outlet or something, but it was weird. Why would you knock on your neighbor's door at 2 a.m. for something that could wait until morning? A few days later, I was leaving for work around 10 p.m. and I saw him outside having a cigarette. We made eye contact and he waved. I waved back and got in my car. When I got to the hospital parking lot, I realized I'd forgotten my badge at home. I needed it to get into the pharmacy. So I turned around and drove back, annoyed at myself. When I pulled up to the duplex, I saw Chris's car was still there, but his lights were off. I figured he'd gone to bed. I grabbed my badge from the kitchen counter, was in and out in like 30 seconds. As I was walking back to my car, I noticed his curtain move. Just slightly, like someone had been looking out and then stepped back. At 10:30 at night, when he'd supposedly gone to bed. It gave me this creepy feeling, but I pushed it down. Lots of people are up at 10:30. It's not that late. Maybe he'd just laid down and heard me drive up. The next week, I started noticing more things, small things. Like, I'd come home and my doormat would be moved slightly, or I'd find footprints in the dirt near my windows that weren't there before. Once, I came home and I swear one of my windows was unlocked, but I couldn't remember for sure if I'd locked it that way. I started to feel paranoid. Maybe I was just tired from working nights. Maybe I was forgetting things. Then one morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You looked tired yesterday." I stared at it, confused. I replied, "Who is this?" No response. I screenshot the text and thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? Someone texted me? They'd think I was crazy. That night at work, I told my coworker Jess about everything. The knocking at weird hours, the moved doormat, the text, all of it. "Girl, that's your neighbor," she said. "It has to be. Who else would be paying that much attention to you?" But I've never given him my number. Doesn't mean he couldn't find it. You're on Facebook, right? Your number's probably in some data breach or something. It's not that hard. She had a point. I felt sick. When I got home that morning, around 4 a.m., I checked my Ring doorbell footage from the day before. I don't check it every day, usually only if I'm expecting a package or something. But I scrolled through the motion alerts, and there he was, Chris. Standing at my door at 3 p.m. the previous day, which was when I'd been asleep. He wasn't knocking, he was just standing there. For maybe 2 minutes, he just stood at my door, facing it, not moving. Then he bent down, like he was looking through the mail slot at the bottom of my door. We barely used the mail slot. I always got my mail from the shared mailbox down the street, but it was there. He stayed bent down for maybe 15 seconds. Then he stood up looked around, and walked back to his side. I felt like I was going to throw up. He'd been looking into my apartment while I was sleeping. I called the police that morning, showed them the footage. They went and talked to him. He claimed he'd knocked and I didn't answer. So he was just checking if I was home because he needed to ask me something. The looking through the mail slot? He said he dropped his keys and was picking them up. The police told me that what he did wasn't technically illegal. He was at his own house on a shared porch. Unless he tried to break in or threaten me, there wasn't much they could do. I broke my lease a week later, told my landlord I didn't feel safe, showed him the Ring footage and the text. He was actually pretty understanding and let me out of the lease without penalty. I found out later, through a mutual friend of a friend or something, that Chris was evicted about a month after I left. Apparently, the new neighbor who moved into my side reported him for similar behavior. I guess the landlord finally took it seriously when it happened twice. I still have that text saved on my phone. He looked tired yesterday. I read it sometimes and get that same sick feeling in my stomach. How long had he been watching me? How much did he see? I live in a regular apartment building now, with actual security and cameras everywhere. I'll never live in a duplex or townhouse again. I don't care if it's cheap. Sharing a wall with a stranger, not knowing what they're doing on the other side, what they're thinking, what they might be planning, no thanks. Never again.